Greetings, friends. David Marks here. Luminance range masks are one of the most powerful tools inside of Adobe Photoshop Lightroom Classic. Selecting the parts of your image that you want to enhance using luminance values rather than shapes or colors is not for beginners. If you are already familiar with the way that masking works, then let's jump right into my Lightroom catalog and let's get started. On the screen right now is a black and white photo that I created for this demo. I intentionally picked a black and white here because to understand how luminance masking works, we need to think about the tones or brightness values in our image. In Lightroom Classic, our scale of brightness runs from pure black, which has a luminance value of 0, all the way up to paper white, which has a value of 100. Medium gray, which is what we call a mid-tone in black and white photography, has a luminance value of 50. When I open up Lightroom's masking panel and activate the luminance range tool, a little box will appear. Next, I'm going to bring my cursor, which is turned into a luminance selector tool, out over my image. If I drop a sample point up here, for example, on these dark pixels in the sky, then I'm telling the program that I want to alter these very dark tones. If I click here and turn on the Show Luminance Map option, then hopefully it will make sense that the area that is covered in red are the parts of this image that fall within the same tonal range as the spot where I just clicked the mouse. If I come down here and adjust any of these sliders, then my mask will change all of the parts of my image that fall within this tonal range. When I clicked the selector a second ago, I was telling the program that I was interested in altering a very narrow piece of the scale of brightness. The pixel that I clicked on had a luminance value of about 20 some, but right now you can see that this mask is changing a much wider range of dark pixels. This wider range, the extension beyond the point that I sampled, this is what we call the fall off or the feathering. If you look over here on this tiny gray ramp beneath the words luminance range, you'll see that there's an inner oval. This oval represents the zone that I actually selected. And then these two triangles beneath the bar, they define the feathering. Lightroom calls these triangles the upper and lower fall-off controls. To narrow down the range of pixels that I'm currently changing, I can either refine the selected area by dragging this little handle here, or I can adjust the fall-off by dragging these triangles. If I drag this triangle on the left in towards my selection, then I'm telling Lightroom that I do not want the changes that this mask makes to extend out to my darkest pixels. When I allow for lots of feathering, when I allow the change to spill over into the darker tones, then the red overlay extends to the left. The same is true with the fall-off control on the right. If I slide this one up, then the change will spill over into more of my medium gray and brighter pixels. If I were to turn the Show Luminance Map overlay off right now, for example, then you can see that much of this image is getting darker because the change that this mask makes now affects a wide range of tones. Finally, if I bring both feathering controls in so that they're really close to my initial selection, then I'm changing only pixels that are very similar to the one that I originally clicked on. Now, this kind of tone-specific precision might sound like a great thing, but generally, we need a little fall-off in our masks to prevent the appearance of chunky artifacts. Let me show you one more feature in here, and then we'll put all of this into practice with a real image. When I created this mask, I used the sampler, the eyedropper, to create a point sample. I could have expanded the range that I was selecting out by dragging a rectangle instead while the selector was active. If I put my cursor in here, beside these little gray bars, then these tiny handles appear. If I want a wider selection, then dragging these out would give me similar results. Wider selection, narrower selection. Moving these controls expands or contracts the zone that is 100% within our core selected area. Finally, if you are happy with the range of tones that you have selected, but you want to move your entire mask up or down the tonal scale, then you can click and drag this little dot in the center to move the whole thing around. With things set up this way, now I'm telling Lightroom to darken my highlights and midtone pixels. Well, now that we have covered all of the luminance mask mechanics, let's put this into practice. Here, we have a beautiful sunset that I captured one evening in Glacier National Park. This one is an HDR composite that I made using Lightroom, and I have done everything that I can to fine-tune the overall image before I started recording this tutorial. Before we jump into the masking, let me press the letter V on my keyboard, which is the shortcut for convert to black and white. I want you to see that beneath the colors in this photo, there's a tonal skeleton. I often find that seeing my image as a black and white is helpful before I start messing with luminance masks. In this image, my sky pixels are all highlight tones. The whole sky is made up of very bright, almost paper white dots. The jagged peaks of those mountains are midtones, and the shadows in the valley are closer to pure black. Now that we know which tones are where beneath the colors of this image, now we can start to make some improvements. When I look at this image right now, the first thing that I notice is that the sky feels too bright. To fix that, I'm going to open up the masking panel, and then I'm going to create a new luminance range mask. To do that, I'll bring the eyedropper out here over one of these bright clouds, and then I'll click and drag out a little rectangle. Let me turn the Show Luminance Map option on. And this selection, it looks a little too tight to me. Right now, there are parts of the sky that are not included in this red overlay. So I'm going to expand my selection out by dragging here. And I'm also going to bring this lower fall off control down a little. Now, let me add some contrast and dehaze into this zone. That looks great. And in this photo, I love the way that these changes are also gently spilling over into the mountain peaks. When I tried to make the same changes using Lightroom's Select Sky command, it did too good a job, and the mask that the program automatically generated did not include these mountain tops. Next, I'm going to click on the Create New Mask button again, and then I'll create another luminance range mask. This time, I'm interested in targeting my changes to the midtones in this photo. So I'll bring the eyedropper over here and drag out another selection. This gives me a pretty good starting point, but right now the fall off includes too much of my highlights and shadows. So let me choke these in a little. Pulling the fall off controls in closer to my core selection should solve that problem. Now I'm going to make this part of the photo a bit brighter, and I'm going to add a touch of warmth. I'm also going to add a bit of texture and clarity too, since this is the part of the image where I want the appearance of maximum sharpness. You know, to keep things from getting confusing, let me pause here for a second and name these masks. Now, let's add one more mask to finish things off. This time, I want to target the low tone. I could use the eyedropper again, but instead, I'm just going to adjust the sliders myself to isolate the zone I want. With this mask, I'm going to add some blue to increase my color contrast. I think I'll also add a little regular contrast, bring up the shadows, and I think I'll bring the saturation down just a touch here so that my blue shadows don't compete with the blues in the sky. Let me close the masking panel. And now, let me split my screen so that you can see our finished product on the right and the one without any masks on the left. Our refined image looks great to me, and making this one sing was easy thanks to those luminance masks. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you learned something today, then please hit the subscribe button and leave us a like or a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in our next tutorial.